Welcome to Living Your Greatness. Each episode, we bring on great people to inspire you to achieve your greatness. We discuss topics all related to health and wellness. Listen to world-class stories, learn valuable lessons, and turn knowledge into action. It is now time for you to unlock your inner greatness. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Living Your Greatness. This is your host, Ben Mummy. We have a new guest on the show today, and her name is Tasha Kredl. For those of you that don't know Tasha, she is a self-healing health coach who believes an individual's health is composed of physical, emotional, spiritual, and energetic health. Tasha has been empowering people to heal themselves from inside out to allow them to reach their true potential. So Tasha, it's great to have you on the show. Starting with the first question today, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So my name is Tasha Kredl. I'm a leadership and self-healing mastery coach. I basically teach people to come back to their core organic selves. Most people don't really know what that even means. So kind of getting out of the system, really healing whatever shame, guilt, worry, heaviness that is stuck in their bodies that are preventing them from really leading powerfully and living in a space that is graceful and fluid, and also achieving your goals so that it's really kind of easy to do and you don't have to burn out, and you can have the freedom that you're looking for, and you can feel really good inside your body and continuously flowing with yourself and life that way moving forward. So a lot of people, again, don't think that that's possible because we've seen our parents, society kind of work, hustle, and their body's deteriorating, even though they may be working out, eating healthy, doing all the things, but like there's something missing. There's a disconnection. There is a lack of, they're not feeling great within themselves. And so I teach people to really understand their own personal code, meaning what's really going on inside the core. What are you really feeling? What's really going on in your perspective of yourself, of life, of others? Because that's, I think, the biggest thing is like we all have our own perspective as to how we see things. And the way that we see things will determine how our bodies react. So, example, quick, let's say, I don't know, somebody didn't return my call. One person can be like, oh, completely, like over my head, like I don't really care, that's totally fine. And to somebody else, well, that probably triggered a trauma of maybe dad leaving when she was younger. And automatically, what happened in that space is that the whole memory is being brought back to the surface inside the body. And so now her whole day is all messed up, and she's not feeling great within herself. Her self-worth is really low. She's not feeling confident. She's disconnected from her heart. Same thing goes for men. And in that space, we all know we're not productive when we're in that space. How have you dealt with your life when you've gone through like a breakup, or you've lost a job, or haven't done well on an exam? Or there's always this deeper part that's like, why? And it really brings up a lot, which is a lot of things that we don't usually deal with from the past. So it's not that like my work is, in the past only, because it's really about what is possible for you. What do you think is possible for you? And what do you choose for yourself in a way that feels, again, graceful? And it doesn't have to be hard and challenging and difficult and heart-wrenching. But yeah, that's we can go like on and on and on about this, but that's basically what I do. So
that's awesome. So this actually brings me to my next question. Everyone has a story. So what is your story? How did you get where you are today?
Yeah, thank you for asking. First of all, what I think is really interesting, two factors. First of all, I really do believe that the best way for humans to learn is through stories. It's like basics. We thrive off of stories. It's like, hey, tell me yours. You get inspired, you get kind of like thrown off or whatever, right? Like there's so many different things that can happen with people sharing their stories. And second of all, I really think it's important to share your story once you no longer have an emotional charge to it, meaning it's just a story. So what I'm sharing is coming from a place of, neutrality, where I've dealt with what I dealt with, and now I'm just where I am. And I just feel called to like share that because I don't want, I want people to listen to this with an open heart and to not have sympathy, because that's really not my goal here. So story being my story. I mean, I grew up in the same neighborhood as you, Montreal, and between France and Montreal. So I was always going back and forth. So a lot of different cultures was really interesting for me growing up. Dad was a pilot, owned a couple businesses. Mom became an entrepreneur when I was 7, built a multi-million-dollar company, franchise, sold that a couple years ago. Went through a lot of trauma with my parents' divorce, family stuff. I had shingles when I was 11, which is unheard of. That's something you see in like 8-year-olds. So obviously going to the doctor, the doctor was like, well, what happened to your kid? You know, like what's going on at home? Them not knowing, they're like, well, we're just going through a divorce. Like, you know, we're taking care of them. But so there was that. You know, I didn't know English till I was 12, and my dad put me in an all-girl English Catholic high school, and I only had guy friends. So it's that alone, again, may sound silly to the rational mind for an adult, but at that time, it was very traumatic. Little things happen here and there, you know, went to high school, went to college. That's where I met you in CJEP. And then over time, I did my business degree. I always loved business. Both my parents were entrepreneurs, did my business degree. And then after that, I had trouble like finding my space in the world where like I was working as an assistant in interior design. I was working as a business administrator. I did a little bit of accounting here and there, and it just wasn't flowing with me. So I was kind of like struggling to find, you know, that reason. And in the in between, there was a lot that happened, like, you know, breakups and toxic relationships and more crazy things with family. I mean, that's really at the core. All of our crap really comes from relationships. Like that's really where it is, right? Business relationships, family relationships, partner, loving relationships, friendships. And yeah, I think the biggest shift was I went through a pretty big breakup when I was 19. That was very toxic. And, you know, the guy was cheating on me and was doing drugs and lied to me about it. And basically my whole 2 years of a relationship with him was a lie. And I was just completely torn apart. And I went through my own phase of drugs and rebelling and drinking and partying. And for a long time, actually, before that, to be honest, probably was not able to tell myself the truth for a little while. And another thing that was a big part of my life was sexual abuse, which was a huge thing. And then I decided to start feeling better about myself. So I started working out really intensely. One thing led to the next. You know, I met these girls that were doing bikini competitions in the bodybuilding world. And I was like, oh, cool. I've never even heard of this. Looks great. Like I've always wanted to do something like this. And it just became like this, oh, like you should compete. Like that would be fun. Like, of course, like you'd be great. Awesome. Like I have nothing better to do with my life. Let's do it. So I became a bodybuilder, competitor, bikini bodybuilder. And for about 3 years, I was doing competitions, and that was really strict. So speaking of masculine, feminine energies, I was very much in my masculine because it's very go, 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 hustle, hustle, you know, wake up, go train, eat, shower, go to work, train again, come home, meal prep, go to sleep, do it all over again for like months. And I lost a lot of friendships. I lost myself. I lost my connection to my femininity. And also going back a few years, I already had started my spiritual journey when I was about 16 years old. So I already had like a mentor at that time. And I was already doing the work which it's funny because it's such a strong kind of part of my story, but I forget it all the time. I'm like, oh yeah, like that happened where like I was going for sessions and doing like emotional freedom tapping at 16 years old to heal my anxiety, because that's the only thing that would work for me. And I would do meditations and, energetic cleansings and do all the things. And that wasn't really heard of back then. So I kept that really, really secret. And yeah, over time, what happened is that after competing, my body just like shut down. I did not, and I do not specifically believe in doctors. And this is not to say that, doctors don't have a part to play in our world. They do. But at the time, what my body was experiencing, I just knew that it was part of my learning process. And so I just kind of dealt with what I was receiving, which was a lot of like different, really, really strange symptoms like inflammation, like hot on the left side, cold on the right side. It was just all over the place. I had a lot of eating disorder problems after that too. So like binge eating, bulimia, that was a whole other thing. And then over time, I just like, what ended up happening at that same time is like, it's almost like I had a third like awakening where it felt like I did a whole reset on my life, where I didn't know how to look at food. I didn't know how to look at people. I didn't know how to look at myself. I didn't know, it just felt like everything was like a blank canvas. And it felt really scary because I felt crazy, to be honest. I was like, how could I just like not, I just remember like my eyes wide open and like, what the hell is going on? Like, I don't understand. And everything just started, creating a ripple effect where it was like, okay, like I'm going to choose myself. I'm going to do the work. I'm going to, heal myself from all this stuff. Like, I'm just going to go in and just try. And this ended up being, I was working at a gym at the time, Mansfield in the West Island, that doesn't exist anymore. What year was that? So it was 2015. I was working there, and then from one day to the next, I was, you know what? I just want to work for myself. That's it. Like, I want to become a personal trainer. People were asking me, I'm in. So I quit my job at the gym. I had one client that I signed up like the next day, and she was my hairdresser. Like, I had no plan. I had no safety. I just did like a full out quantum leap. So yeah, I was like, whatever, I'll just do it, And then within like a month or two, I'm working like 40 hours a week, like making bank because I'm charging like $60 an hour, and I was 22, and I just like went for it. And over time, it just became like, like Lululemon partnerships and different like sponsorships online, and getting invited to like the Toronto Pro Fitness show just to work there for the weekend, and things were just like rolling all the time. And it was pretty interesting to be a part of that world and to also heal myself at the same time. And then my work just transitioned into the coaching world, which I didn't really know was a thing, but like a lot of my clients would come to me training, but really just to talk and like just to get my insight and to get my input and my advice and my guidance. And I was like, man, there's something here. Like, I don't know what it is, but like, whatever, let's just figure it out. And at that time too, I decided to take a month and a half off. And this was in 2017, 2018, maybe. Decided to take a month and a half off and travel to Bali. So I did that. And one really interesting thing about Bali is that they often say, like, when you get in there, it's like she'll swallow you right up, meaning like you have no choice but to crack open if you're in the right space, of course. Because a lot of people go there and they're like, it's really pretty, but like a lot of shit happened. Of course, a lot of shit happened. So went there and it really cracked me open. I remember I did my first breathwork class there that was 3 hours long, which is ridiculous. And I was vibrating from the inside out. I like sat on the grass for like 30 minutes after that, just being like, what the hell just happened? Like, I don't even know what my body is anymore. Like, this is just crazy. And I came back home, was there for 3 months, and I went straight back. And then I was gone for about 6 months, where I just kept traveling in Bali and Thailand, and just, yeah, I just kind of like expanded my mind and my consciousness, and I wanted to learn more. And that was really tough too, to be honest. It wasn't all unicorns and butterflies. There was a lot that came up, but that's part of the work, right? So did that, came back, and then, I was just kind of like receiving that guidance of like, hey, start like hosting meditation classes in your space. And I was like, okay, like I'll just do that, never taught it, don't really care. Let's figure it out. Seems to be my theme. So yeah, that's what I started with. And like every weekend I'd host like a meditation class, and I'd have like, first it was like 5 people, then it was like 10 people, then it was like 20 people. And I was like, wow, like people are really liking this, like interesting. And then I was getting asked for coaching. My first client, I was charging like $500 a month, which is like puny. But yeah, and then everything just like rippled and rippled and rippled and expanded. And now here I am. I've been in Austin, Texas for like 6 months. Living my life and continuing my work and expanding my work and my clientele. And I just finished a group coaching program for 60 women. That was insane and incredible. And now I'm just focusing on my work and myself first and foremost. And that's about it. That's my story.
Your story says a lot, right? There, like a wave, there was highs and there was lows, right? And sounded like, there was a time and period in your life, where there was a lot of lows, and when we experience stuff like that, we focus on the lows, right? And but it takes resilience, it takes work, and it takes a mindset, which obviously you developed, right? So I applaud you on that.
So Tasha, this leads me to my next question. What is emotional wellness? How would you define it?
I think the easiest way that I can describe it is really having and building self-awareness and an understanding of what your emotions really are. Because a lot of us attach ourselves to our emotions thinking that they define us and that we are that. Example, when you hear somebody who has anxiety, they're going to tell you, I am anxious, like I am the anxiety, which is false. You are experiencing anxiety. So it's really understanding like what is the core of an emotion? It's an energy in motion in your body. Where do those things come from? How do they get ignited in the first place? Well, they come through your thoughts. And where do your thoughts come from? Well, they come from your consciousness, from your mind, from your brain. And okay, how do they get ignited? Well, a belief system. Okay, where's the belief system? In your subconscious mind. Okay, so what does your subconscious mind have to do with anything? Well, if you really want to know the core of everything, your programming of your subconscious mind, which runs your whole life, which is your habits, your actions, your thoughts, your words, the way you express yourself, gets programmed from when you are born till about 14 years old. Actually, they say that your full programming of understanding, communicating how with other humans, understanding facial expressions, understanding what they how they express themselves, everything in that sense, in that field, gets programmed by the age of 3. So just that alone, can you imagine the type of trauma that the kids now are going to experience when they've been literally observing people with like half their face covered and they can't even see the rest of their facial expressions? It's going to be very traumatic for them growing up, right? So all understanding like, okay, there's a lot of things that play a part here. It's like, what are your emotions? Where are they coming from? Why are you experiencing this? What are your triggers? What do they say about you? What are you experiencing? What do you want to experience? That's like the key question. It's like, who do you want to be? What do you want to express? How do you want to show up for your life, for yourself in general? What does that look like? And I think it's, again, like I said, most of this work is really big time self-awareness. If you're able to express, like, if you're having a conversation, a fight with a partner, and then all of a sudden, things are blowing up, it's being that person who says, you know what, it really triggered me that like this happened. It's not you did this to me. It's just this happened and now I'm feeling like this. I'm experiencing this emotion. There's another wave of an experience that wants to be acknowledged. And the way that I always describe it to people or my clients is that inner child work, for example, is so important. Okay. Think about the movie Peter Pan. We basically have been told our whole lives to not be kids, to not be in our playful, childlike behavior, because that's immature, and that you need to grow up and you need to be an adult and you need to have your responsibilities in check. Because if you really knew the power of really honoring your child and what he or she wants, you would understand how magical your life would be. So we're taught to live our lives like this with our inner child. We're supposed to be living our lives like this with our inner child. I've experienced some client transformation that has been literally like their whole lives have changed just because they took the time to acknowledge that little girl or that little boy that was not receiving that love from mom or dad at the age of like 10, 4, 5, whatever. That moment, that single moment of holy shit, she did not feel loved. It doesn't matter how rational, how, logical, whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. At that time, that was the perspective. That perspective created a belief system. The belief system is now creating thoughts that are creating a ripple effect of triggers and actions and reactions, impulsions that are showing up consistently in people's lives, right? And this is the thing, is like, we are all in our society, everyone's leading out of impulse and reaction. No one's really taking the time. There's like a 4% mark. I really think that's really what it is. It's like a 4% mark that people choose for themselves and do the work to be in a space where they come from a space of choice and grounded energy, where they're like clear, they've done the work, they're not reacting, they're not being impulsive, they're just like having clear awareness of what's happening if they're getting triggered, and they choose. But look outside there. Like, I mean, it's crazy, right? Like, everyone's just super reactive. And then out of this reactive state, then they know at a deep level, they know what's happening. And then they feel this shame and this guilt and this like sadness and depression. And then they won't deal with it because they don't know how. We've never been taught this. And they think that they're defined by that. So they will literally think like, oh, I'm a shamed person. I'm shameful. I am the shame, which is not true. You are just experiencing shame. So how can we shift that in a way that feels better? And how can we acknowledge that, honor that? The way that I like to explain it is like, your emotional wellness and your well-being, your inner state reflects in your entire outer state. Like, there is no separation as to what you're experiencing in the physical reality. And this can get very like quantum physics or like multidimensional living. We don't need to get into that space, but we're all energetic beings. Everything about us is energy. This cup, at the core of what's in all these little atoms, there's nothing. It's just energy. It's empty. Same with us. We're full of elements. We are 99% water. Inside those molecules, there's nothing. It's energy. So what gets to control it? Well, it's our mind. Our mind is extremely powerful, and we don't even think about it. That's why people are talking about manifesting, which is that's a whole other thing too. But at the core, like I said, it's like, if you want to change your physical reality, your outer reality, if you want to have better relationships, if you want to make more money, which that's another thing, people don't believe that it's connected. So in that space, I mean, you can't shift anything till you go within. It's never going to change. I'm telling you right now, I've seen it multiple times. I have a ton of friends who are coaches who work with people who are CEO, multimillionaires, billionaires, and these people still don't think that, like, if they want to change something, they have to go within. They're still fighting that. And that's where people like me come in, and we tell them and we show them. And when they get to see the power of that shift from within, and therefore on the outside world, everything shifts. And the way that the Taoists explain it is that if you have a bowl of rice, which is your mind, and it has this rice inside, and if you want new quality, better, clean, white rice, I mean, yes, you can pack on more rice, but I mean, it's just going to get really messy and it's going to overflow and you're going to have a mess and you're going to have to clean it up and it's going to take more time, right? And you're not going to enjoy it as much. So you really have to empty this bowl of rice in order to create space for the new rice. So simple. Same thing with our own systems from the inside out. We got to clear that stuff up from back then, current perspectives, what actually happened, healing your traumas, healing your perceptions, and choosing again. That's like really what I think, most of my clients have told me that what they prefer the most about our work together is that they finally realize that they always have a choice. They always have a choice. Most of us don't think that we do, but we do. So that's how I would describe emotional wellness.
I think you really tapped onto a lot of good points there. And that actually kind of leads me to my next question is, we live so much outside of ourselves, right? We're always kind of like I was saying before, busy being busy, right? We engage in other conversations at work or at home or social media, right? Social media is a blessing in a lot of ways if you use it the right way, but it also could be time consuming.
So Tasha, why do you think emotional wellness is so important? And where do you think self-healing fits?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, when it comes to self-healing, there's 4 or 5 main components, but the energetics within your body, within your system, emotional, physical, mental, and spiritual. What's really interesting about spiritual is that a lot of people think that you have to be like this, like crystal, saging kind of person, which has nothing to do with that. Personal opinion about spirituality is a belief in something greater than yourself. A bigger, let's say energy, just even believing in energy alone is your own spirituality. You get to make it whatever you want it to be. But if you think you are alone, experiencing everything alone, that there's nothing behind you, nothing guiding you, nothing supporting you, nothing, that there's no coincidence, or that there is coincidence, and that there's no fate, and that there's none of that. It's just like you alone, it's all about you. I mean, that's going to be a really, 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 really challenging life to live. Your mental and your emotional together. I mean, like what I was explaining is like your emotional and your mental is really one. Like all of those things are really one. They all affect each other. And so one of my favorite quotes, I'll put it this way. One of my favorite quotes is from one of my teachers, David R. Hawkins, that said, literally word for word, you don't have to believe every single thought you have inside your head. And a lot of people are like, what do you mean by that? Like, so we have different parts of our being inside of our minds, inside of our mental space. We have the ego, we have the subconscious mind, we have the conscious mind. And we have to understand who's talking, because we have these thoughts that go, you should do this, or you shouldn't do that, or you should feel like this, and you should feel like that. And we go, oh my God, it's true. And we keep believing these thoughts as though they are us, and they're false. These beings, you can, an easier way that the people I work with to look at the ego is like a separate person that lives inside your head. Give it a name, have a conversation with it. The problem with the ego is that if you don't take the time to acknowledge it and you keep ignoring it, it's like a child who has a tantrum. Can you imagine what happens? It just gets worse. So if you have the self-awareness and the capacity to really sit with yourself, observe the ego, observe the subconscious, observe the conscious mind, and you understand who's talking and who's behind this and what's their intention behind this. And then what do you want? Do you really want to have and create this dream state, this dream life, this new job, this new company? Are you really going to listen to that thought that goes, you're not going to make it? You can't. You're not going to make it. If you listen to it, that's exactly what it's going to be. What you believe to be true will be every single time. And this is the thing, is like your belief system is behind everything. And we learn our belief system through our environments, our parents, authorities growing up, teachers, caretakers, other beings, like for a long time, for me, as an example, like I always thought that I had to choose between love or my career, because I saw my parents divorce Like it was a shit show. It was a war. And it was because my mom decided to build this like empire for herself. So the belief system that ingrained in my mind was that if I choose to build an empire for myself, I will not be able to sustain my family. I will not be able to sustain a partner, a loving relationships will fall apart. So I don't like to say need, because nobody needs anything. It's a want. This type of work is a want. It's an addition. It's an amplification. It's an activation. This is a choice. If you really want to fulfill this vision you have within yourself, if you really want to shift the way that you are experiencing your current reality, if you want to feel better about yourself, if you want to feel completely energized, really move through this fatigue that you have, this disconnection to people you have, if you want to create an expansive, loving relationship with people, you're going to have to understand who's talking in your mind every day. And for that to happen, I don't like to say fastest, because this work is not about how fast can you do it. But if you really want to start shifting things, practice observing who's talking and choose to sit still in silence long enough so that you can quiet all those minds and you can simply focus on your breath and your heart, and allow yourself to feel one with yourself and everything around you. And that happens just let alone like when you sit in meditation long enough. You literally forget that you have a body. And that's where you want to get to, because now the brain understands that there's no barriers, there's no limits, there's nothing that you cannot do. So the more that you practice just being still and in silence, you break those limiting barriers that are constantly around us all the time. And you get to tap into a frequency that is extremely elevated, infinite, eternal. And that's our core truth. That is that moment. It's there.
The next thing that I kind of want to lead to here is, you're doing some pretty exciting stuff, right? So we've spoken about who you are. What is your expansive self?
I started, again, my podcast was like a thought, and I was like, oh, that'd be cool. Like, yeah, let's do it. That other quantum leap, it seems to be a thing that I do. And it's actually something I actually teach to people, because I really do think that what's easier for us, or like what our genius is part of our way of giving back to the world, teaching that. And whether it's like literally making that your work, or just teaching that willingly, and just whatever part of your being, great. I obviously love to talk, so I'm just like blah 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 blah. I've literally been like that since I'm a child. And I do think that all of our voices matter, of course. And there's, like I said, we all have like those things that people really connect to, like whether it's, I don't know, it could be anything. But my voice, it's like I kept hearing the comment of like, I could listen to you talk forever. And I kept hearing this like over and over and over again. Whether it's like, I don't know, all of our voices have a vibration, right? It's literally just vibration. Think about singing, music. It's the same thing. It's a vibration. And those vibrations activate people. They make them feel a certain way. And so I kept hearing people just being like, hey, like instead of webinars, can you just like have a podcast or something so I can just like play you in my car, or like, for a walk, and I was like, yeah, man, I could talk about things forever. Like there's so much I want to share, my stories, other people's stories, whatever that is. And so it just like, became a thing. Like, let's do a podcast. And I was like, great, super easy. Let's get it rolling. Got it done. It was like, one thing to the next. I'm like doing 3 episodes a week. I actually haven't done much of it lately because there's been so much going on in terms of my own work. But yeah, within a year, there's like over 40 episodes, and I've had amazing guests, like people I was like, damn, like imagine if I could get this person on my podcast, like that'd be insane. And I did get them, and they're amazing conversations. And like I said, we talk about so many different things. And of course, like the core of it is like self-healing. But we talk about like meditations, or different ways of thinking, or sensual embodiment. Like, what does that even mean? Or conscious leadership. I love conscious leadership so much. And the energy of money. That's another thing. Again, it's like, if everything is energy, why is money different? It's not. We have such a program with money. And for me, if I can provide a conversation and a story for people to recognize that not only can they charge their worth, and that they can create the life that they want, and that they feel is there, and they're like, yeah, a couple of years. I'm like, why not tomorrow? Like, there's something here that prevents you from thinking that you can get this next week. So what is that? And my motto behind my podcast, I guess, is that my experiences are not mine to keep. Mine are meant to be shared. I do believe all of our experiences are meant to be shared, but a lot of us don't really want to share so much honesty and vulnerability. And I'm like, okay, I'll do it. Like, I'm in. I'll do this work that maybe some people don't feel comfortable doing. And it's led me to amazing clients, amazing connections. I share a lot of vulnerability. You know, there was one episode that I literally spoke about like my childhood and growing up and my first, sexual abuse experience, and how I healed that, and how it showed back up again, 10 years later. And it's like, what do you mean? Like, how does this stuff happen? How do you move past that? And of course, I think it's like I said at the beginning, it's like sharing them from a place of released emotional charge, so that we're not teaching from a place of feel sorry for me and, listen to my pain and I'm a survivor. No. Because if you're teaching from a survivor standpoint, you are still attached to your story, and you're still using it to seek attachment or love or validation or proof. And that is a dangerous game, because now you're defining yourself by this experience and you think you are nothing but that. And that is not, you are way more than your story. But it's just a simple little nugget that we get to use to help people see from a more expanded view, to not feel so alone, and to not feel like they're the only one experiencing what they're experiencing. And that I want to tell people, like, you can create the life that you want. You can move past this. Everything is temporary. Let's have conversations about it. Whatever you need, let's do it. So that's really where my podcast came from. And the name I waited. I was like, what name is this going to be? Like, what is it going to be? I don't know what I'm going to call it. And I was like, what do I really want to teach people? And it's like, wow, you can really be yourself and just be expanded. So you can choose to embody your expansive self every day. It's a choice. It always comes back down to a choice at the end of everything. It's so wild. It's so simple, but it can be very, very, very simple to just make that choice today. So that's my podcast for you guys.
So Tasha, who are your mentors that have had the greatest impact on your emotional wellness?
I think, in the external world, I would say Ram Dass is he's no longer actually, all my teachers, funny enough, are no longer with us in the physical plane. Ram Dass talks a lot about loving awareness and kindness and stillness. The way he looks at the world with goggles of love reminds me how I can choose to see things out of pure bliss and love, or I can choose to see things miserably. And he really brings me back into a place of nothingness, where nothing really matters. And it can sound morbid or it can sound very freeing. And again, that's your choice. So he was a huge part of my humbly coming back to myself. Another teacher that I would say is David R. Hawkins, who talks a lot about the energetics of emotions. So letting go, the pathway of surrender, healing and recovery. He's super spiritual, but he's also an MD and has a PhD. So it's very backed up by science. It's not even just woo woo, like, oh, this might be a thing. Like, he's actually like done studies and cases on what he talks about. So for me, if you can back up your woo woo spirituality with science, oh my God, like your world's about to explode, right? And then I would say my third greatest teacher in everything that I know is myself. And we always have that. And you can look at all of your experiences as another opportunity for you to learn and for you to grow. And if you can look at your experience and yourself, your body, who you are, who people think you are, who you perceive yourself to be, if you can look at yourself and that whole game from an external point of view and look within and be like, oh, like, look what she's doing here today. And what is she like? Oh, what she thinks this is true. And she's doing this and she's doing that. And she is thinking this. Great. Like, okay, how can do I want to keep this or do I want to shift this? And do I want to keep living my life like this or do I want to be free? Do I want to be stuck or do I want to be elevated? But also like understanding like who's the I, who's the me. It might sound very confusing to people, like who we think we are and who we actually are. Like your greatest teacher is you. That's why at the core of what I do, there's too many people that tell others what to do, like consulting, for example, versus I choose to believe that we are our own greatest doctors and healers and coaches and financial planners, all the things. And it just takes patience and a willingness to even see that for ourselves. Because again, like we don't think that we're much till we actually see the truth. And then we're like, wow, I'm everything. I'm everything. And yet nothing. And in that space is where you get to really come back to yourself and see your own truth. And like, that's where you get to choose your own freedom is really through yourself. So yeah, I can say all these teachers, taught me all these things, but at the core, what they did is help me remember what I already knew. That's really what it is. So if you think that all the answers are external, you're going to keep chasing and running and attaching and putting these people on pedestals. And that's a dangerous game because there is such an attachment to thinking that you are not that already, which again is coming from a place of lack. So if you're coming from, again, if somebody before I used to take like just about anybody, to be honest, to work with. Now I'm like very specific. Like I have a criteria that people need to fit to work with me. And I remember when there was like people that are like, I need you, like I need this. And I was like, oh man, like that is, I don't know, like just the fact that these people think that I have all the answers. I would get on discovery calls. Like, by the way, what you think I know, I don't know. So if you think I have the answers for you, I don't. But I can guide you into finding them for yourself. And then if they're like, well, no, that's not for me. I'm like, great, see ya. Like, I'm not going to be your guru. Like, I'm not going to be that person that like, I'm not that person. Like dismantle that right away and come back into truth because I'm not going to be that person for you. So yeah, it's going to be a long race for you for sure.
Absolutely. So I just want to take the time, Tasha, just to thank you thank you for being here on the show today. I think it's added a lot of value to our listeners. So Tasha, where is the best place for my listeners to find you online?
So like we spoke about, my podcast, Your Expansive Self. So it's not your expensive self, but also your expansive self could lead to your expensive self. Yep, totally. So I'm on all platforms. So, Spotify, iTunes, whatever else podcast platforms are out there. I'm on there. On Instagram, I'm pretty active. So I'm under Tasha Kredl, super easy. And then there's my website, TashaKredl.com. Everywhere is Tasha Kredl. It's not really hard to find. And then recently I'm very much on Clubhouse. I used to be a lot more at the beginning of the year, but now I'm like popping in and out. Again, I'm on there under Tasha Kredl. Apparently I'm the only Tasha Kredl in the world. I don't know, like everything's under Tasha Kredl. So it's great. I love it. But yeah, like I said, I'm working. I have a few group coaching spaces. Right now, I'm not open for anything. I'm pretty busy with my current mastermind that I'm leading. I have a few one-on-ones, but again, like I really like to focus on what's going on at the moment. And when things open up again, great. So I have like, an email list that people can subscribe to if they want to get notified when things open up, when courses are ready to be launched and when they're open for offers. And then I'll just like drop in sometimes like a few kind of like free webinars or workshops with other people or whatever. But I never really know when those things come through. They just come through when they want to. So yeah, I would say to stay in touch for sure through Instagram. Everything is pretty much announced there. So, but thank you for having me and being part of this conversation and allowing me to share my words and my voice and my teachings and what I know to be true. I think, we're in a time where it's definitely, like I said, it's not, I do think it's needed. But at the end of the day, it's you can stay in your bubble or you can choose to think differently. It's really up to you. I'm not here to force anybody. I mean, you got to want this. It's not, I used to be like, people need to know this. And now I'm just like, meh, like if you want to get into it, great. If you don't, I'm not here to fight you. That's not my job here. So yeah, thank you for giving me the space to share what I know to be true.
All right, that's perfect, Tash. I will make sure to add that to the podcast notes. So again, Tasha, thanks for being on the show today. It's been a pleasure to have you on.
Absolutely. We'll chat soon. Enjoy your day.
Thank you for listening to the Living Your Greatness podcast. If this show has added value, please subscribe, leave a rating, and make a review.